And welcome to the regularly scheduled meeting of the San Francisco Ethics Commission. Commissioner Ambrose?
Present.
Commissioner Smith?
Present.
Commissioner Gray?
Present.
Commissioner Lee is excused today. She has a conflict and is unable to make it. Agenda item number 2, public comment on matters appearing or not appearing on the agenda. There being no public comment, we'll go on to agenda item number 3 and 4, the consent calendar, draft minutes for the Ethics Commission September 20, 2019 regular meeting, and agenda item number 4, proposed stipulation, decision, and order in the matter of It's Our Time, SF Women Supporting London Breed for Mayor 2018, SF Ethics Commission complaint number 1718-134B. Call for public comment. There's no public comment. Any comments from commissioners? Okay. So I'll move for a motion to move to approve agenda items number 3 and 4.
So moved.
Second? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
So agenda items number 3 and 4 are unanimously approved. Agenda item number 5, an informational presentation on new Ethics Commission data dashboard tools for the November 2019 election.
Good afternoon, commissioners. My name is Tyler Field. I'm an information systems engineer. I just had a new title, which I believe Director Pelham will update you in her executive director's report. And I'm here today to give you a brief presentation on updates to the data tools that the Ethics Commission provides. And if we can switch over to the computer. I want to first start with a quick refresher on campaign finance reporting. Specifically, campaign finance reporting deadlines and campaign finance reporting periods and deadlines. Throughout the year, let me make this a little. Throughout the year, campaign committees have to present or have to file a Form 460 with the Ethics Commission. That's a very dense, typically governmental, difficult to understand paper form. These are due at different periods throughout the year. I have a nifty little calendar here showing the 2019 deadlines and are we okay? Okay. And reporting periods. For 2019, the first semi-annual Form 460 was due on July 31st, and it covered January 1st through 30th. And I'm sure I don't have to elaborate too much on the remainder of the calendar. You can see that we're right here on October 18th, and the last Form 460 was due on the 26th of September, which covered July 1st through September 21st. So you might ask yourself, do we currently know what or how much a campaign committee has raised or spent as of only the 21st of September? The answer to that is kind of complicated, but it's also not really, because we do know some additional information about campaigns or campaign committees' fundraising and spending efforts during the 90-day period before an election, which this year started on August 7. During the 90-day period, campaign committees have to file an additional report certain campaign committees have to file an additional report if they spend or receive more than $1,000. I'm bringing all this up to emphasize how the data dashboards used to present information in a way that mimicked the way that it was reported, either in this very dense 460 or in these additional late period reports. But someone coming to our website wanting to know how much money is being raised or spent by a committee doesn't want to know how much was spent as of September 21st, they are interested in how much has been raised or spent as of right now. So these dashboards and the improvements to the dashboards that I've made recently are a way to quickly see all that information.
I'm sorry, Tyler, could I ask a question?
Of course.
So the 460 is a retrospective filing, so the communities are reporting on funds that were raised and spent in a prior period. And so that would have been most recently September 21st, you said? I mean, one question, maybe this is for Mr. Ford. Why don't we go to, say, September 30th, like the end of the month? Or is there any particular magic to the dates that we're picking?
You're talking about the reporting periods for the 460?
Yes.
Those are established by state law.
I see. Okay,
and
that's right.
they're generally described as days before the election. So they'll say you have to file a report that covers the 40th day to the 20th day before the election. And I'm not sure exactly what the calculus was that went into defining those reporting periods. I think they generally were trying to make ones that became progressively shorter as you approach the election. So you get better
visibility as the closer you get to the election.
But of course, under the state regime, there's this big gap that's left since they only have 2 pre-election reports, and our new 3rd pre-election report fills the majority of that gap. So on the Friday before an election day, there'll be another 460 due that will at least get you 11 of the remaining 17 days before the election. So there's still a little gap that's missing, but most of it will come in on the 460.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. If we can switch back to the computer. Thank you. The dashboards are the way that members of the public, press, interested parties come to our website to understand what's going on. This looks very similar to the dashboards that I presented to you in, I believe, February, with some additions. Like I said earlier, the 460, the dashboards used to be a representation based on the forms that were filed. So this page used to show the 460, which was the latest, very thorough accounting of, or the most recent very thorough accounting of campaign finance.
So it would be the actual form itself? Or just the
representation that was shown on this page came directly from only the 460.
I see.
Now it is showing the 460 and those additional late period reports added together. So like I said, when someone calls and says how much money is in this race, they don't care how much money was in the race as of September 21st. They want to have the most recent addition. This shows all of the incoming funds that have been reported to us in one place. The 460, the late period, and money from the public financing program that has not yet had an opportunity to be reported. The same type of thing I have now done for the expenditures tab. This is money spent by committees. You can see independent expenditures by third parties, the money that the actual committees have spent, and late contributions made in support of committees. I just want to reemphasize these updates make understanding the current elections campaign finance easier in real time. And now moving over to some neat new features. I'm switching to the running sums tab. This shows a running sum over time as how a committee has spent their money and how they have had money coming in. You can get a rough idea of the rates of both. You can do some interesting research. And most importantly, you don't have to go through a stack of paper forms with a calculator. Switching to the estimated cash tab. This is kind of an interesting new idea. It's really just those two charts from the previous tabs, expenditures and money in, with that subtraction done for the interested person. It's an estimate, I want to emphasize, because some transactions don't have dates reported with them, so I have to make an assumption about the period of that, or the date, the beginning or end date of the period in which the transaction was reported. This is kind of an idea of the bank account of a certain of committees. You can start with this information. You can start to look for patterns and ask interesting questions. Again, something that's not possible with just stacks and stacks of paper. And now that you have this data on the computer, you can start to ask interesting questions like what type of donors might a candidate have. Committees are required to ask for occupation and employer of their contributors. And here on this occupations tab, you can see the top 10 occupations listed by contributors to committees. And on the employers tab, we can see the top 10 employers of contributors. You can ask questions like, do employers of any one company give in large amounts? And as it turns out, the city and county of San Francisco, the employees of the city are very civically minded, as you might notice. That shows up as a employer for many committees.
Tyler, could you scroll back? Previously, there was unitemized. There's a listing here that says for unitemized monetary.
Yes, unitemized monetary contributions are contributions less than $100. This is the aggregate of all
of those
contributions of small donors.
Donors under $100.
Yep. And just to be clear, committees don't have to report the name, occupation, employer of those contributors who give less than $100.
Okay.
So you can already begin to see how useful this tool is. It allows you to understand this very dense information very quickly, whereas it would take hours to figure this out if you had paper. And over the next year, I'll be working on some projects to update the infrastructure behind this data so that we can do some exciting new things. Here on this location tab, I already have a map of the concentration of contributions by zip code. With the work that I'll be doing, we'll be able to do things like provide a map like this, not just with zip code, but with, say, supervisor district. Another interesting thing that will come out of this work I'll be doing, right now the public can see how much a committee has spent to buy an ad, but soon we'll be able to make it so that they can see that ad also, whether it's on television, on print, via radio. They'll be able to download it themselves.
Oh, so you're going to embed a link to the actual ad itself?
Yes, that's what we're working towards.
And then, so when you mentioned that you're going to add a filter by district, would that mean then the public or a reporter could go in and search to see where contributions are coming for a candidate, for District 7, for example, and what percent of those contributions are totaling, from District 7? Are they coming outside the district?
Yes. I should have explained this map a little bit better. On this map, it shows zip codes because those are reported already, and the darker the color on the map, the more contributions have come from that zip code. So you can quickly you could filter down by contest, by candidate, and see where one candidate is fundraising more than another. You could begin to, and with the supervisor district's map, you could begin to ask questions like, Board of Supervisor candidates, where do they get most of their funds from within their district or outside their district, things like that.
And for ballot measures, you could do the same thing.
Yes.
So, for example, could you show us, I don't want to derail your presentation, but could you show us Prop C for San Francisco? That would have been that's the vaping.
Certainly. Right now I'm filtered down to candidates only, so I'll change to ballot measures. And then filter down to measure C.
Almost $26 million. Wow.
So yeah, not a lot of variety in measure C right here.
So how do I look at this state map? So there's California's highlighted, and then the amount ranges from 540 to 19,421. So orange, the state of New York, the shade, is that indicating the amount falls somewhere kind of in the middle of that bar?
Yes, I guess I should emphasize that the colors are automatically generated because they change as the filters change. And I think I happen to remember in this contest, there aren't that many contributions to either supporting or opposing, and I believe they're all from either New York or California. So the idea there is that you can see on the scale on the bottom, bright red indicates 19 million, and yellow, pure yellow is $500, but the two states are both somewhere, or New York is somewhere in between, and I think California is the 19 million.
It's definitely eye-opening.
So other for the work that I'll be doing in the upcoming year, we'll also be able to provide up-to-date information to the city's central repository of open data, Data SF. This is a warehouse of data that departments across the city use to provide access to the public for open data. Now, these tools that I've shown you and that will be forthcoming aren't that useful unless people know about them and know how to use them. So over the next year, I'll also be working on outreach to educate people on these tools and others that we provide and how to use them. Last year, Pat Ford and I did a lot of outreach to members of the press. I'll be continuing that type of work and looking to expand the audience. Now, it's a very high level overview and a quick update, but I didn't want to get too lost in jargon and wonky form numbers. So I'm happy to open it up to questions, other additional questions that you may have.
Any other questions from commissioners? Well, this is, I think, a quantum leap forward in the presentation of the data. I think it's accessible, it's understandable, and makes it so much easier for people to find the information that they need. And I would like to hear more as plans become more concrete on how the outreach is going and which organizations. There was the reporter who came previously, and I think that he was surprised and delighted to learn that there could be a tool like this available. And I think that it's we have to trumpet the great work and showcase it and make it accessible and available to the stakeholders out there to help them make more informed decisions. So if you could include that next month in your policy update, Pat, I'm not sure where it resides exactly, or maybe in compliance and engagement, to just keep us abreast of the efforts to promulgate this more widely would be great.
Thank you.
Any public comment? Yes.
My name is Ellen Li Zhao. I am a public employee, and I am a resident for San Francisco. And whatever you're doing here, ethics commissions, staff, volunteers, and people pay or not pay, it is almost an illegal operation for San Francisco, had no other party to be in a political sense. Because the United States Constitution clearly spells it out that we are a republic government. In San Francisco, for the last 45 years, we only have Democrats for 45 years. All the lefty policies that you were presented right before me has no other political balance. About 2 weeks ago, current Mayor Landon Breed passed an ordinance and say equity for public employees. That means there's a lot of imbalance employee representation within the government. I am here to challenge you all ethics commissioners, pay staff or volunteer to think about what you do for the city. If San Francisco has 900,000 residents and almost 32,000 government employees with a budget $12.3 billion, you as ethics commissions had a duty to deliver quality care, to make sure elected officers, they deliver what they running for office. As you know, in August 2019, we were reported by 13 departments. We now have 21,000 homeless people dying, suffering, overdose, hunger, sickness on the street. I have to commend you because you volunteer your time, and the people in here, they get paid for. As I run for mayor right now, I have been bullied because I am a conservative and I am a Republican. There's no other party other than Democrats. I have been bullied, and I have been reported to you, nothing has been done. Now I'm asking for the people in San Francisco, we have choice. The choice is to report this to the federal government, that we, the public, has been abused because we don't have any political voice, political means for whatsoever that you're doing here. In another word, that we are running a tyranny government, a mafia government, and the government scam the public services and have scammed the government money into a lot of illegal activities, and you might be part of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Agenda item number 6, discussion of, monthly staff policy report.
Thank you, Chair Chu. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Pat Ford, Senior Policy and Legislative Affairs Counsel. I have a very short report for you this month. Just a few key updates on ongoing projects. One of them, which is a big update, is that on the 4th of October, the mayor signed the public financing ordinance. So it is now finally approved. All the steps are done, and it is slated to become operative on the 1st of the year. So we are in the process now of preparing to implement it, and I'm meeting with the heads of other divisions in the office to figure out everything that we need to do so that it's a very seamless and smooth rollout of these new provisions. And I'm very confident that we can do that. So I'm happy to report that to you.
That's terrific news. Congratulations.
Thank you. Another update, which is good movement, is on the Form 700 e-filing project. It seems that we have a tentative date for the first meeting with employee bargaining units, and we're shooting for November 6th. So hopefully within the next week or so, the Department of Human Resources will issue a notice to the bargaining units inviting them to that meeting. And on the staff side, we're going to be preparing our comments and probably some kind of presentation to the bargaining units to make sure that they understand the project and that they are fully part of the process and have an opportunity to share any thoughts or concerns they have. We're hoping that we'll have at least this meeting and maybe one more before the holidays, because it seems that during the holiday season it gets hard to plan these meetings since there's so many different people involved. Potentially over a dozen different unions might want to come and participate. So it's just a lot of people to coordinate with. So we're hoping that we'll be able to make some good progress on this before the holidays, most likely then kind of take a hiatus if we're not done and pick it up again in January. But hopefully doing these meetings in the next few weeks will be a good start on that.
How many meet and confer meetings do you anticipate needing to hold?
Hard to say. It's very hard to
Have
say.
a ballpark, just low to high range?
I can
At
tell you that on
At least one, right?
Yeah, at least one. Can tell you that on previous meet and confer projects, I think we've had 3, average of 3. I think that's how many we had for the last biennial code update, which at least is somewhat similar in subject matter. It's about the Form 700. So if this process similar to that, maybe 3.
And is the process time-bound at all? Or a deadline by which all the meetings need to be completed?
Not by law, really only operationally. There's a certain point at which we as a staff just need to have that process completed so that we can bring the regulation before you. You have the opportunity to consider it, potentially approve it, and that we would then have enough time to do our implementation in time for January 1, 2021. So I'm not totally sure kind of what that drop dead date is for completing meet and confer, but most likely sometime in the spring, roughly, is when I would like to have that done at the latest, so that you could then at least have 2 or so meetings to consider that regulation, and then we would have that 60-day window where it sits over at the board, and they have the opportunity to veto it. And then once that 60 days passes, then we would be able to do our final implementation, and hopefully we would have at least 3 or 4 months on that. So I think if this meet and confer process, if we find ourselves in the middle of next summer and it's not done yet, we'll probably have to have a discussion with you about whether or not we can meet the January 1, 2021 deadline then. But I'm hoping that we won't find ourselves there, and that we can do 1 or 2 meetings here in November, maybe a 3rd or 4th one in January or February, and that in that late winter, early springtime, that's when I'll be able to bring a regulation to you.
That would be great. So keep us posted as the planning unfolds, and I'm happy to write a letter or engage in any way that it could be helpful to make sure that we keep this on track so that we can meet that January 2021 deadline.
Great. Yeah, I'll definitely do that. The last update that I wanted to highlight for you is that I designed essentially a departmental training that is meant to give city employees, department heads, and any city employees who support commissioners information about their ongoing responsibilities under our code and under state laws that we enforce. So this training includes information about conflict of interest rules, Form 700 filing, statements of incompatible activities, all the things that apply to all city employees. Then we talk about department responsibilities like receiving Form 700s or distributing statements of incompatible activities to employees. And then with commissioners about recusal rules, things that apply specifically to commissioners. And this is something that that Director Pelham asked me to do because after her recent presentation to the meeting of all department heads that the mayor holds, she gave a presentation about some of our new laws. The mayor expressed interest in all department heads staying abreast of those rules, and as a result, some department heads asked, could they get a refresher? Could we come on site and talk to them? And so we developed this training to be responsive to that, to make sure that departments feel supported, that they feel like our department is a partner, that we're there to help them, make sure that they understand their responsibilities, and that they have all the information that they need. So hopefully, as we do these trainings on site, we're building alliances with other departments and other employees, that they see us as a resource, they see us as someone they can come to for help, and perhaps come to with concerns with things that they see. I heard some questions from employees at the training that Rachel Gage and I did on the 16th about potentially unethical behavior, about potential violations. So it's interesting to hear that employees are seeing this and they're not sure what to make of it. So we want to make sure that they have some kind of framework, that they know when something might raise a red flag and they know who to go to get more information about it and potentially to lodge a complaint. So I think that this is a very worthwhile project. I'm glad that the first one went so smoothly. It was a relatively small department. It was the Contract Monitoring Division, which is a department, or not actually a department, but I guess a division within the city administrator. And a staff roughly the size of ours. I think they have somewhere under 30 staff members that were present. So I think it was a good first run, and it's scalable. I think we could do it for larger and larger departments, and I'm hoping that we'll get continued interest from other department heads moving forward.
When is the next one scheduled, Pat?
We don't have one scheduled right now. I'm in discussions with another department head, and I haven't heard from him in a bit. I think that he's delegated the scheduling responsibility to someone in his office, so we're still working on that one. But that's the only one that's in the pipeline right now. So we might explore maybe with engagement and compliance of whether or not we should do some more proactive outreach to let folks know that this is available to them, and maybe that will get a little bit more interest.
I would be interested to know, as these things rolled out, and also if you, what types of questions people are asking, because that would then indicate where the gaps are in their knowledge about what the obligations they have, to fulfill as in their roles as employees. And I think it's fantastic that you're focusing on making sure that people know what could raise a red flag, know what the obligations are, know what the law requires of them, and then who to go to, right, if they see something. And then what can happen, like what are the consequences of, that kind of behavior. So that's, I think, the major underpinnings of an effective compliance program. So kudos to getting that off the ground, and keep us posted on the rollout.
I will, definitely. That's all the updates that I had in mind, but glad to answer any questions that you might have.
Questions from commissioners?
Thank you.
Public comment on this agenda item, number 6.
My name is Ellen Li Zhao. I am a public employee, and I am a bargaining team. So that's how I know there's a lot of dirty secrets that we government employees going through. You remember I came here many times, reported to you. We have 6 government employees reported to the Ethics Commission, gave them report, did audio recording, and a few months later we were told things are missing, and that until this day still no answer. The reason I bring this up is because the report itself sometimes is not the reality of report. And I wonder how accurate the Ethics Commission reports reflected the problems that we have. I do not know a lot of dirty secrets until I ran for mayor, June 2018 last year. I've been through so much about election fraud, about ethics commissions, cover-up, and about electoral officers that 100% Democrats. For example, 2019, this year, I went to election office, inquire election voters information. We had more than 490,000 voters, but more than 100,000 of them, they no longer in the city, but it's still in the voters' roll. I believe that between election and ethics commissions has the duty to improve this process. And I am a director of the Civil Services Civil Grand Jury, one of the members for the San Francisco chapter. I have been reported to you, election office need to be audited and need to be reported for legal actions. 2019, I found out 599 voters. They are 100 years old to 151 years old, still voting in San Francisco. Ethics Commission was informed. Election office was informed. The district attorney was informed. Today, October 18, 2019, we still have the same voters in the voting roll. That means that people continue to vote. People are no longer in San Francisco, more than 100,000 of them still in there, and the people continue to send them ballots. In San Francisco, we have 60% absentee ballots, and that may be one of the reasons that is supported by Democrats' evil agenda only. Anyone who had a common sense will think about what I said today. Ethics Commission is the unethical department that I encounter. I protest in front of the office for a purpose of insanity. And I want you to do some investigation on this department for the way that it was functioned, set it up. It was set up to fight off government corruption. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Okay. Agenda item number 7, discussion of monthly staff enforcement report. However, given Commissioner Lee's absence, we'll hold over the city whistleblower protection ordinance discussion to the next month. Mr. Pierce?
Sure. Thank you, Chair Chu and Commissioners. Just a brief presentation about the remainder of this item then. As we do every month, we've reported some statistics to you both on the front page and on the back 2 pages. You can see that the number of complaints requiring staff's triage is holding around 50, and that the amount of time that it takes staff to decide whether to investigate or refer or dismiss those complaints is moving in a downward trend. We're hovering now at about 6 months. If you were to consult the graphs on page 4, agenda item 7, attachment 1, you would see that about 3/5 of the complaints currently in preliminary review staff received within the last 3 months. And so the bulk of the complaints that require staff's attention are relatively new. I think if we look at the docket, staff have received close to 40 complaints in this fiscal year so far, 40 complaints that we have added to the docket, as opposed to, say, informal complaints that, as the Director of Enforcement, I have handled through a new protocol that we have described to you before, where I consult with that informal complainant and steer them toward the proper jurisdiction where they might raise those questions, or resolve expeditiously with them that the facts they allege might not constitute a violation of law. And again, that is limited to informal complaints, which the charter distinguishes from formal complaints, and as the regulations reinforce.
And so just for my refresher and for the people watching at home, if a complaint comes in and it is not within the jurisdiction of the Ethics Commission to investigate, say it's, it belongs elsewhere, you'll then connect them with the right people and the relevant departments to the extent possible.
To the extent that we can identify who the right department might be, yeah, we will direct those complainants to those departments.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes.
I have a question. And this may have been something that's been answered in the past, but because of my fairly recent appointment, I'm not familiar with it. In looking at the summary to date of revenues, I was struck by the dramatic difference in the lobbyist registration fees of $85,000 budgeted and $7,500 in receipts. The other categories, the discrepancy between budget and receipt is far less dramatic. And I wondered if this is an ongoing situation or if there's some historical reason or some new reason for that discrepancy.
I'm going to defer to the Executive Director on that question.
Commissioner Smith, I think this might be on the Executive Director's report that you're referring to the lobbying figures.
Oh,
but I am happy to answer that
Okay,
question
all right,
now
all right.
as you've raised it.
Ahead. got my numbers mixed.
Oh, that's fine. I'm advised to wait until that item's called.
Okay.
But I'll make sure to
All
respond.
right.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, and then as to the matters that are currently under investigation, you can see that there are 90 of those. Nearly half come from the campaign finance context. Just shy of 40% of those fall into the category of government ethics, and the remainder are divided between allegations of wrongdoing in the lobbyist context and the whistleblower protection context.
Mr. Pierce, since it's an election year, although it's kind of an odd year, and anecdotally, I understand that there's been an uptick in an election year with an increase in investigation complaints. When would you typically see that happen? Would it be now, leading up to the election? And have you seen a corresponding rise in the number of complaints that have come in?
You're correct that anecdotally we do see more complaints during an election season. If I remember correctly, ahead of the June 2018 election, in the 3-month window preceding or up to and including that election, I think something like half of all complaints that were filed during that fiscal year were filed during that 3-month window. But when we looked instead at the November 2018 election, the uptick was far less dramatic. And I have not run the numbers to be able to answer your question with real certainty, but anecdotally, my experience is that we have not gotten as many campaign-related complaints that I might have expected. I think one reason for that is that there may be a perception among the public that the mayoral race is less close this time than it was in June of 2018. Mm-hmm. If you review the polling, I think as a member of the public, you might come to that conclusion. I think it's also the case that there are fewer supervisorial races taking place. It's possible that the public is somewhat less concerned about the campaign finance activity taking place during this particular election. Those may be some circumstances contributing to that, but again, this is purely anecdotal and I can't really say.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. A couple of notes about the referrals to the Bureau of Delinquent Revenue. We have had conversations about some of these matters over the course of the last few months. I wanted to note just a couple of things regarding some of the newer matters that the Fines Collection Officer has referred to that Bureau for their handling. One is the SF Latino Democratic Club. You'll note that the Bureau and that committee had negotiated a payment plan between the two of them. And that question may have arisen in a prior meeting about what the terms of that plan might include in light of a regulation that appears in the Commission's enforcement regulations governing the scope of payment plans to which the executive director herself might agree. The Bureau negotiated a plan with that committee. Subsequently, our office, I believe starting with the Fines Collection Officer and then eventually routed to me, received a phone call from an attorney who claimed to represent that committee and hoped that we might pull that matter back, sort of claw it back from BDR to the Commission and renegotiate the amount of liability for which that committee was liable. And our view of that was, no, this is now a matter belonging to the Bureau of Delinquent Revenue. Any negotiations on behalf of your client have to be pursued with the Bureau itself. And you can see from the notes here that the Bureau has requested that the attorney substantiate in writing that the attorney represents that client, and evidently the Bureau has not succeeded in obtaining that documentation. I would not be surprised, however, if there were some relationship between the committee's defaulting on that plan and the efforts of that attorney to seek a better outcome on behalf of his client. The last thing I would say is regarding the last committee on the list there.
I'm sorry, Mr. Pierce,
Yeah.
I just have a question. So if, would it be possible to take it back from BDR? to renegotiate the plan? I mean, I don't know if that's a question for the city attorney. No, I'm not suggesting that we do that, but is it prohibited or is it permitted?
Andrew, do you want to take a stab at that?
I mean, I think it is possible for the Ethics Commission to be involved in those discussions. And so I don't know if that's something that the department is interested in exploring.
I mean, yeah. Commissioner Smith?
If you don't renegotiate, has the statute of limitations run for them to seek a writ or judicial review of the imposition of the penalty? Or are you saying that the club agreed to this penalty and then entered into a contract with the city to pay it back, and they would have waived their right to challenge the appropriateness of the fine?
I don't know specifically as to the question of waiver, but I believe as to the question of deadlines, I think the statute of limitations on a writ is 30 days. And given that this penalty was assessed before June, because the referral was made June 21st, if I'm right about the 30-day deadline to writ the city, then they're well past the statute of limitations. I don't know from the Bureau's perspective whether a payment plan constitutes a contract for which this contracting party has breached. But I think that's a pretty fair guess about what the posture might be.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've not seen litigation over those before, but I'm just curious if that's where we're headed.
I think given the size of that penalty, that is likely on the mind of the Bureau. When you look at the last committee on the list there, that particular committee has evidently refused to pay a penalty that is less than 20% the size of the first one that we were speaking about. And there, the Bureau indicates their intention to litigate to collect that penalty. So I can't speak for the Bureau, but I would not be surprised.
Not to collect, mean to get out from under that penalty. So mailed intent to file a lawsuit letter, I'm sorry, so that was BDR filed to collect against the central committee. Debtor refuses to pay, so what it says mailed intent to file a lawsuit letter, that's the city filing the letter. Okay,
Yes, the city through the entity of the Bureau.
okay.
Yep.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
How did they notify you they refused to pay? Did they send you something in writing, or?
It didn't come to us. It came to the Bureau of Delinquent Revenue, and I don't know in what terms they would have communicated their refusal. I can find out if you want to know.
I mean, I'm just interested.
Yeah, okay.
What about the promise to pay? That.
Well, it looks like they promised to pay by the end of today. My guess is that most of these things are negotiated pretty informally. I think whenever the Bureau can make contact with debtors by phone or by email, that's how they like to do it, because it's the most efficient, the least administrative overhead for them. So my guess would be that Democratic Club probably got an email from the tax attorney over there and probably wrote back saying, okay, yeah, we understand what's going on here, and we agree to pay it. And then informally they agreed on a deadline, is my guess. But I can follow up with my contacts there and get you more specific information. Coming back to the question about whether the commission might ever claw back a debt like this from the Bureau, assuming it's not prohibited, I think we still have a question about whether we ought to do that, which is, it's a question of policy or a question of strategy. It would suggest maybe to debtors that as long as they refuse to play ball with the Bureau, they may have an opportunity to seek a more favorable venue. Our view is that one reason to refer them to the Bureau is that we don't want to give debtors an opportunity to venue shop, and that really we're on the same page about what is owed to the city.
I guess that's why I was asking. I think that's where the other commissioner was going. I mean, in that instance, if they've signed a payment plan agreement with the city, then that is a receivable of the city and county of San Francisco. I'm not sure under those circumstances, you know, I think we would have to look at it before you even thought about bringing it back and renegotiating that, because then you're waiving essentially a receivable of the city and county of San Francisco if they are obligated to pay. So, I mean, and I don't know, maybe it is just an informal agreement that but I'm assuming a payment plan is in writing and has certain, you know, installment payments and dates and the like. So I'd be curious, though, to see what BDR uses for their payment plan. But I do think that once you have a contract with the city, there's a lot of just basic municipal code provisions about not being able to, you know, ignore it or renegotiate it, et cetera.
Going back to Chris Jackson, I think this item has been on the report since I was appointed to the commission, and it's pretty much the same, no change in resident status and skip tracing to locate is, I mean, what, and I know they don't necessarily have the answer to this question, but my question is, what is BDR doing? I mean, it's been 3+ years since I've have seen this on the list, and the referral date was 2013. That's already six plus years ago.
Would you like me to bring back more information about the tools they use for skip tracing or trying to locate a debtor?
Yeah, I mean, yes, the tools, but when are they going to deliver some results on this? I mean, it's been 6 years. I mean, how much longer are they going to be doing it? If you're not getting the result you want, what do you need to do differently, right, to get the outcome? And they've been not that effective.
Well, I think the other question sometimes in these cases is how much are we spending to try and find somebody, and is it worth, and is the Ethics Commission transferring money to BDR, you know, based on the number of cases or how many times they skip trace? Because I know that there is a procedure through the municipal code. If it's a lost cause, you can make a determination that this person has gone completely underground and it's not worth the effort and the expense of trying to find them. So I'd be curious about that too. When does BDR say, you know, they're whatever, they changed their name and they're not findable? But
yeah, that question has come up in this conversation. I can't remember whether I reported back, but I did consult with the Commission's fines collection officer about whether we should cut and run on that particular one. And her view was that his conduct was poor enough that she would be uncomfortable with us just walking away. Now, the Commission may make a separate evaluation about what it wishes to do in this particular matter, and maybe that evaluation turns on the facts about our engagement with BDR. I've not read the MOU. Maybe Deputy City Attorney Shen can speak to it, but I believe that what is true of our engagement with BDR is that they take a percentage of the debts that they collect, not that we pay them fees related to the number of items on the docket. But I don't know.
If it's their expense loss, I mean, if we're not paying them every time somebody picks up a phone and says, I can't find Chris Jackson, then fine, we'll just defer to them to keep trying to find. And I guess I said him. I don't know if Chris Jackson is a woman or a man, but anyway, I was just, balancing the cost benefit if it's not productive. But
it's helpful feedback, and I will endeavor to review the MOU.
Yeah, I'd be curious, because obviously we're giving them a lot of work.
And I'm happy to take any other questions if you have any.
Questions? No? Public comment? Agenda item number 7. Okay, no public comment. Agenda item number 8, discussion of Executive Director's report, an update of various programmatic and operational highlights of Ethics Commission staff activities since the Commission's last monthly meeting.
Thank you, Chair Chu. As I mentioned at the end of last month's meeting in my verbal comments to the report, we've had a number of staffing announcements over the last month. We've had some progress with some positions that we've been able to realign and readjust, and so the detail that I highlighted last month is here for you. The one piece of new information that we did not have last month, sadly to report, is that we were last Friday said farewell to one of our electronic disclosure and data analysis team members, Arnaldo Calderon. He'd been with us a year. He came over from the Department of Public Health on a promotional opportunity, and he was working with the team primarily on the Form 700 e-filing for all process. He decided to take an offer for a promotion to the private sector. So as it goes, we have tremendous staff, but unfortunately he was taken away by an offer too good to turn down. But that said, we do appreciate the legwork that he started for us this year on the Form 700 process, and also enabling us to have a simpler way to provide a lot of the data that you get each month on the enforcement report. In his absence now, we will be working to fill that position, of course, and Stephen Massey, who is the Director of Technology Services, will also be stepping in to fill that role so that we are trying to keep it as seamless as possible. I think that's a bit of a big ask, but we do want to make sure we're doing everything we can to keep the Form 700 project moving with all due speed. So I appreciate in advance the work that the team will continue to do, even though Arnaldo has gone on to take on some new responsibilities in the private sector, and we do wish him well. We enjoyed having him as part of the staff.
Well, we're sorry to see him go, but I think he's helped start to build a good foundation, and I know that Stephen Massey will continue to keep the ship moving forward. And congratulations to Johnny and also to Tyler on his new appointments, and keep up the great work. Yeah.
Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt. I also did want to respond to the question that
Thank you.
Commissioner
I'm
Smith
sorry,
raised.
I jumped the gun on that.
That's okay. On the revenues report regarding the lobbyist figures, the column, as you noted, for the FY 19-20 budgeted amount is what we anticipate the lobbyist registration fees will result in over this year. The number that is shown in the right column is receipts as of the time of this report, and typically those registrations will show up in bulk in January, February.
Okay.
So there's usually a big infusion, and that number jumps up significantly at that
That's
time.
helpful. Thank you very much.
Sure. Happy to answer any other questions.
But we're also very much ahead on campaign finance fines as of October versus the budgeted amount for the year.
I think that reflects a good amount of work that Jeff and Ernestine Braxton, our fines collection officer, have been doing to follow up.
Great. Okay, and then, so overall, Director Pelham, how many open positions do we have now to fill?
I'm using my fingers to count. We have, I believe,
One hand, I hope.
No, yeah, it is one hand, I believe, but we have, I think, 5 positions.
5. So including
One in audits, one in enforcement, one in policy, one our senior clerk staff and in the front office, engagement and compliance, and now one in the electronic disclosure division. So essentially one in every shop.
And then, do we need more HR support in order to help fill?
We've been taxed by having limited hours due to the limited resources that we had in this year's budget. They roughly about 14 hours a week is what it translates to with the senior consultant that we have. We've been getting terrific support in those hours. We've been making the best use of them, but they are limited. So
Can we convert some of those salary savings because we do have this 5th new open position to be able to pay for additional support?
I think we need to explore what options we have. It is clear that we have more hiring demands than we expected to this year, and they're going to continue. So we do need to see if there are additional resources. I don't have an answer for you right now, but I will certainly report back to you if we are able to and what the status of that is so that we can try and get our hiring on track as best possible.
Great. Okay. Any other questions from commissioners? Okay. Public comment? There being no public comment. Agenda item number 9, discussion and possible actions on items for future meetings. Any ideas or wishes?
We'll do the whistleblower at the next meeting, is that?
Yes, we'll do whistleblower next month when Commissioner Lee can join us. Public comment on agenda item number 9. Okay, there being none. Additional opportunity for public comment on matters appearing or not appearing on the agenda pursuant to Ethics Commission bylaws, Article 7, Section 2. There being none. Motion to adjourn?
Move. Thank you.